Have you ever had one of those days that felt completely normal? So normal that you didn't even realize it was about to become the day everything changed. The kind of afternoon where you're just moving through your routine, thinking about dinner, what to make, maybe that chicken, errands, what still needs to get done. And then later, when you look back, you can't remember the last normal moment before things went wrong. Before we start, I want to say this story involves real people and real events. I will be sharing it in a calm, respectful, and non-graphic way, based on documented investigations and court records. When something comes from reports or later findings, I will make that clear. She went out for a jog on a quiet California afternoon and didn't come home. No, be back soon text. No missed call. Just an empty stretch of road where she had last been seen. You know that tiny flicker of worry when someone is a little late, but you still tell yourself not to spiral? That's where this began. Northern California neighborhoods have a certain stillness to them. White streets that echo a little in the afternoon, lawns trimmed just enough to show someone cares, but not obsessively. Neighbors who wave when they see you, but couldn't tell you your birthday. Life there runs on quiet routines. School drop-offs in the morning rush, grocery runs that always take longer than expected, dinner at roughly the same time each evening. The kind of place where nothing big is supposed to happen. That was Sherry's world. She was a mom of 2 young kids, petite, long dark hair, often pulled back when she was busy. People described her as energetic, attentive, very involved in her children's lives. The kind of mom who remembered which kid didn't like crusts on their sandwich and which one needed their stuffed animals to fall asleep. From the outside, her life looked full. School events, errands, family routines, the kind of schedule where you sit down at the end of the day and realize you never really stopped moving. Her husband, Keith, worked nearby. He was described as steady, routine-oriented, the kind of person who kept life moving in predictable patterns. Together, they looked like so many other families in suburban America, juggling responsibilities, trying to keep everything running smoothly. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic, just normal. It was just another afternoon. She laced up her shoes running. You can almost hear the soft thud of rubber soles against the floor, the quick stretch before heading out. It was cool outside, the crisp kind of air that makes a jog feel refreshing instead of exhausting. She grabbed her phone, probably slipped it into a pocket or armband like always. Maybe gave a quick casual goodbye before heading out. That everyday automatic energy of, "I'll be back soon!" No big announcement, no dramatic moment. Just another run on a familiar route along a rural road not far from home. You can picture it, right? Dry grass along the roadside, the sound of distant cars every now and then, a stretch of road she'd likely traveled before without thinking twice. But hours passed. The afternoon kept moving, the kind of time where you look up and suddenly the light outside has shifted. School pickup time came. She wasn't home. At first, maybe Keith glanced at the clock and frowned a little. Nothing major, just that tiny internal nudge. She's probably finishing her run. Maybe she stopped to walk. Maybe her phone died. He called her. Straight to voicemail. He probably tried again. Still nothing. You know how your brain starts offering explanations when you don't want to believe the worst? Maybe bad reception. Maybe she set her phone down somewhere. But then time kept moving. Minutes started to feel heavier. Then someone found her phone. on the side of the road. Earbuds still attached, strands of hair caught in the cord. Once that phone was found, everything shifted from maybe to something is wrong. Keith contacted authorities, and from there, the pace of the day changed completely. You know how time can feel both fast and frozen at the same time? That's what moments like this feel like. Deputies arrived. Questions started. When did you last see her? What was she wearing? Which route does she usually take? The kind of questions you never imagine having to answer about someone you love. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. First through texts, then through phone calls, then by people physically stepping outside and walking towards the road. Neighbors who had been folding laundry or making dinner suddenly found themselves standing in small clusters at the end of the driveway. Have you seen her today? No, I thought she was just out running. Her phone was found down the road. You can almost hear the shift in tone, voices dropping, conversations turning tight and serious. Search efforts began almost immediately. Volunteers walked along the roadside, scanning ditches, calling her name into open land that didn't answer back. Sherry! Sherry? Nothing but wind through dry grass. Helicopters circled overhead, their low hum cutting through the still afternoon air. Search dogs moved along the ground with handlers, following whatever scent they could find. Flower with her face started appearing everywhere, on poles, on storefront windows, passed hand to hand in parking lots. Her smile in those photos, frozen in time, suddenly became something people stared at, searching for clues in a picture that had once just been a family snapshot. Inside the house, everything must have felt suspended. Her things were still there, her shoes, her everyday belongings, the normal clutter of life untouched. It's such a strange detail when someone is missing. The stuff becomes almost louder than usual. The house says she's here. Reality says she's not. As evening came, the light outside changed. Shadows stretched longer. That's when searches often feel heavier. When daylight fades and imagination starts filling in the dark spaces. Friends and family gathered. Phones buzzed constantly with updates that never seemed big enough. People refreshing pages, waiting for a call that might finally make sense of everything. Days passed, then more. And the story moved beyond that neighborhood. Local news picked it up first, then regional stations. Soon, national outlets were sharing her photo. A mother of two missing after going for a jog. It hit something deep in people, because jogging is normal. Because moms are everywhere. Because this didn't feel like something from far away. It felt like it could happen on your street. Parents held their kid a little tighter. Runners told each other to carry protection, to share their location, to not go alone. People followed the story from their phones late at night, scrolling in bed, hoping the next headline would say, "She's been found safe." Prayer groups formed, search parties expanded, strangers drove in to help look, walking land they had never seen before for a woman they had never met. And through all of it, one question hung in the air, heavy and unanswered. Where was she? Every passing day stretched hope thinner, but it never snapped completely. Because as long as there was no proof of something worse, people held on. And then, weeks later, when exhaustion had settled into the search, everything changed. A driver spotted a woman on the side of a rural road, alone, disoriented, alive. And just like that, the story shifted again. The call came in early that morning. A driver had seen a woman on the side of a rural road. She looked shaken, thin, disoriented. Authorities responded quickly, and soon the words everyone had been praying for began moving from phone to phone, from house to house. "She's been found! She's alive!" You can imagine the wave of relief that hit Keith when he got that call. The kind that makes your hand tremble and your knees feel weak. Weeks of fear collapsing into one overwhelming breath. She was taken to a hospital, where doctors evaluated her conditions. According to reports at the time, she appeared physically worn down and emotionally distressed. And honestly, that's what people expected to see, because everyone had already pictured something terrible happening. Everyone had been bracing for the worst. So when she began to tell a story, people listened with open hearts. She said she had been taken by two women she didn't know, that she had been held somewhere unfamiliar, that she didn't know where she was or if she would ever make it back to her children. Imagine trying to process something like that. The fear of not knowing if you'll see your family again, the confusion of being somewhere you don't recognize, the feeling of time stretching endlessly. Listening to her, people felt horror, but also gratitude. She had survived. That became the focus. Investigators approached carefully. Trauma can make memory come in fragments, like scattered pieces of a puzzle. So they documented everything she said, step by step. What did they look like? Do you remember any sounds, any smells, any landmarks? Sketch artists worked to create images based on her description. Leads were followed, tips were called in. Meanwhile, the community tried to return to normal, but things didn't feel the same. Jogging alone felt different now. Conversations between neighbors carried an edge of caution. "Did you hear what happened to her? I'm not letting my wife run alone anymore. Make sure you share your locations when you go out." Fear lingers, even after relief arrives. Publicly, the story settled into a narrative of survival. A woman had endured something terrifying and made it home. That's what people held on to. But investigations don't end just because someone is safe. They continue quietly, methodically, and little by little, small things didn't sit quite right. Not dramatic at first, not something you didn't notice unless you were looking closely. Just tiny inconsistencies. Details that didn't align perfectly with timelines. Questions that didn't have clear answers. The kind of feeling you get when a story sounds almost right, but not entirely. At first, those doubts stayed behind closed doors. Investigators know drama can blur memory. They moved carefully, respectfully. But as time passed, the case didn't fade. It shifted. From a search for unknown attackers to a deeper look at the story itself. At first, investigators gave space. Trauma can make memory come back in pieces. Details can blur, so they didn't rush to poke holes. They listened, they documented, they followed leads. But time has a way of bringing clarity, and slowly, certain details didn't line up the way they should have. Nothing obvious. Nothing you'd circle and read right away. Just small gaps. Travel times that didn't quite match. Locations that raised quiet questions. The kind of inconsistencies you only notice when you start laying everything side by side. Investigators began learning more on digital evidence, because phones, records, and data don't get scared. They don't forget. They don't mix up days. Phone logs were reviewed, past communication records were examined, movements were mapped out carefully, and then came the details that changed the direction of the entire case. DNA. According to federal investigators, DNA collected during the investigation didn't match unknown attackers. It matched a man Sherry had known years earlier. That discovery didn't instantly solve everything, but it shifted the lens. Suddenly, investigators weren't just asking who took her. They were asking something much bigger. Was she taken at all? From there, the investigation quietly turned inward. Travel records were reviewed, communication histories re-examined, timeline rebuilt using evidence rather than memory. Piece by piece, a different version of events began to take shape. According to court documents, she had arranged to meet that man. She had left home voluntarily. During the weeks she was gone, she had not been held captive in the way she first described. That realization didn't happen in a single moment. It came slowly, carefully, through records and confirmations. The story that had once gripped the nation, the terrifying abduction, the unknown captors, began to unravel. And when investigators finally confronted her with the evidence, the narrative shifted. Years after the disappearance that had sparked nationwide searches, the case took a turn no one had expected. It wasn't the rescue story anymore. It was becoming a criminal case of a very different kind. By the time charges were filed, years had passed since that afternoon jog. The headlines that once asked, "Where is she?" now read very differently. In 2022, Sherry Papini was arrested and charged with making false statements to federal agents and with mail fraud connected to victim assistance funds she had received. For people who had followed the case from the beginning, the news felt surreal. You can imagine someone scrolling on their phone, seeing her name pop up again and thinking, "Wait, what? That case?" The same story that had once filled people with fear and sympathy now carried a completely different weight. According to court records, investigators laid out the timeline they had rebuilt through digital evidence, travel records, and forensic finding. The version of events that had once centered around unknown abductors had been replaced with documented movements and communications. In court, she admitted that the kidnapping story had not been true. There was no dramatic movement, no emotional outburst that changed everything in an instant. Just a courtroom, legal language, charges read aloud, facts entered into record. The legal system focused on what could be measured, the false statements made to investigators, and the financial cost tied to the search and victim compensation funds. She was sentenced to serve time in prison and ordered to pay restitution for the money spent during the investigation. For the community that had once searched roads and fields with hope in their heart, the outcome felt complicated. Some people felt angry at the misuse of resources and the fear that had gripped families for weeks. Others felt sadness, trying to understand what could lead someone to build a story that spirals so far beyond control. And then there were those who just felt tired, emotionally drained by the realization that something they had poured real concern into had unfolded in a way they never imagined. Because even though the story had changed, the feeling people experienced during those weeks had been real. The fear was real, hope was real, and the relief was real. Only the narrative behind it had shifted. And with that shift came a quiet kind of closure. Not satisfying, not dramatic, just final. After the court dates ended and the headlines slowed, life in the Northern California neighborhoods kept moving. School mornings still came early, lawns still needed mowing, people still walked their dogs along the same sideway where search flyers had once been taped to poles. From the outside, everything looked the same. But for the people who lived through those weeks, something had shifted. They remembered the helicopter overhead, the search lines stretching across dry fields, the vague conversations in grocery store aisles had started with, "Did you hear any updates?" They remembered checking their phones late at night, hoping for good news about someone they had never even met. Those feelings don't just disappear because the ending turned out differently than expected. The relief when she was found was real. What changed was the story behind those emotions. Cases like this leave behind a strange kind of emotional echo. Not just anger or disbelief, but that unsettled feeling of having cared deeply about something that turned out to be different than you'd believed. It also became a reminder of how powerful a narrative can be, how quietly a story can spread, pulling in the compassion of thousands of people, and how long it can take for the truth, the full, complicated truth, to surface. For her family, the impact was personal and ongoing. Relationships didn't reset just because a case closes. Trust, once shaken publicly, is even harder to repair privately. And in the age of the internet, stories don't fade quietly. Articles remain, search results linger, a moment that unfolds over weeks becomes part of a permanent record. In the end, there was no dramatic final scene. Just the gradual realization built through evidences and court proceedings that the memory the country had rallied around was not the mystery it first appeared to be. The roads are still there. The houses still stand. Life moves forward, as it always does. But for many people, there will always be a moment of the time an ordinary afternoon jog turned into a national mystery. And then slowly and unexpectedly into something else entirely. Stories like this stay with us, not because of loud, dramatic ending, but because they remind us how complicated people can be, and how powerful a story can feel when we believe it's real. If you made it this far while stitching along with me, thank you for spending your time here. I hope your project grew a little, and maybe your thoughts did too. I will see you in the next one. Until then, stay safe, be kind, and take care of yourself. Bye.